Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. It's been too long, but it's worth it because this one is a double feature. In this video, we're going to be talking exclusively about the symmetrical side of the Brunswick lineup and all of the versatility involved in some of the mainstay cores in the symmetrical lineup. And on the other side, the other video, we're going to be talking about the asymmetrical balls that bring new core and new cover technology. So make sure not to miss that video. But right now we're going to kick off the symmetrical video with the brand new melee jab carbon. This carbon, of course, has the exact same melee core found in all of the previous melee series balls. This one has a medium RG of 2.487 and a total differential of 0.50. And of course that's going to give you a moderate rev up time for this core. And the 0.50 total differential is going to give you the high side of medium on flare potential. It's not completely maxed out. But this nice combination of medium RG and medium high differential means that it's not over flaring or over revving in the front part of the lane. It saves a little bit of that for a later revving, later responding motion, and then unloads on the back of the lane. That's why you see the melees consistently being some of the sharpest symmetrical balls ever in the Brunswick lineup. And this one, of course, is going to be like that. Of course, with a new cover, it has some new characteristics. First, I'm going to remind you that this core has dynamic core in it. That's the blue stuff that you see when you drill into the outer. That gives you less compression because it's a higher strength to weight ratio material, which means more hitting power at the pins. And of course, this one is wrapped in not the same cover stock, which is the Savvy Hook 3.0 cover stock found on the Midnight series. This is actually a different base cover. This is the Activator Extreme Hook. And as the name suggests, it's going to hook more than the Savvy Hook cover base does, which means that this is going to give you overall more traction and a little more blended look for a melee. Even though the melee carbon is technically a pearl ball and it's finished shiny, it's going to give you more of what I would consider to be a hybrid look, where it gives you a little more mid lane security, a little more roundness off the spot, but it doesn't lack any punch. Of course, it's still got that famous melee core, and of course with a name like Jesus, and of course with a name like Extreme Hook, you're not going to lack any motion, that's for sure. Now I'm going to talk about a pair of balls in tandem. It is the new Attitude and the Attitude Control. I'm talking about these guys together because they share the exact same core shape and the exact same core numbers as one another. It's the original Contra core that was in the Fearless and was super well received in the Hero series. Back again now in these Attitudes. And just a little fun fact, this was the original core to have dot technology with the pin on the bottom of the ball and the dot up where you expect the pin to be. So this core has a 2474 RG that's going to be lower than the Jab series, and it has a lower total differential of 0.47 for more moderate flare potential and a little less hook potential overall than a light drilled Jab, for example. Now, this core has dot and dynamic core, and it's in the advanced price point, which means you're getting a lot of technology for not a lot of price, and this cover is really, really good. It's the Activator Plus. I had to steal a look. I almost said Activator Extreme Hook. That is on the Jab. The Activator Plus Pearl cover stock, that's going to be the 3.0 version, which means just a slightly enhanced additive package over the original 2.0 package that was on the Hero series. This one's going to give you a little more natural push, but a noticeable amount more change of direction at the end of the pattern compared to the drilled Hero, the original Hero Pearl from a couple years back. This advancement in the cover stock means that this ball's got a wider range of versatility on medium to medium light patterns, late in blocks, and the pros have been using it and haven't been afraid to throw it away from the pocket and have the confidence that it's gonna close the door and snap out the corners. And that's saying a lot for a mid-price point ball. A lot of times the pros will gravitate toward those HP balls, symmetrical wise, because they have just a little more firepower and just maybe a little more sharpness at the back of the lane. But the fact that this one's being used so widely is a real testament to a really good mid-performance ball. And of course, mid-performance refers to the price point, not necessarily the characteristics of the motion. And speaking of good characteristic motion, we have to talk about the Attitude Control's cover stock. They didn't name it. I think they called it like Pearl Urethane, but it is the Pearl Urethane. It is a little less purple and a little more red this time, but it is that good urethane cover stock that you know and love, or hate if you don't have one, I guess. But this one is going to be in the Contra core, which at a 0.47 total differential gives you much more total flare potential than a Purple Hammer, which has a baby amount of flare potential. That Purple Hammer gets down the lane pretty easily and back ends fairly well, even though the cover is aggressively sanded. And this incredibly similar cover stock has much more flare potential out of the core now. It's going to give you a much firmer mid lane read, but still doesn't quit on the back of the lane. This ball is still symmetrical and has that characteristic back end sweeping motion that symmetrical balls are known for. So this one doesn't hook early in the mid lane and then go super forward. I know there are some urethane asymmetrical balls out there where continuation can be a bit of a problem. Of course, if you're trying to trap it like you normally are when you're using urethane, then that's kind of a non-issue. You let it hook, set, and carry. But this one doesn't do that. This one continues nicely for a urethane, and of course that is because of the enhanced urethane cover stock that we have. So without further delay, let's check out some comparison charts. Taking a look at Brunswick's performance index chart, they rank all the bowling balls by both price point and by motion shape category. Both of the attitudes are in the advanced price point, with the Attitude Pearl being in the flip category, a rating of 79, and the Attitude Control being, as you guessed it, in the control category with a rating of 42. That's going to be much stronger than a twist, but much less ball in terms of total shape than the rest of the reactive balls on the chart. Moving over now to my comparison chart. Hey, check out the new look. It's a little different, I hope you like it. The balls are a little bigger, the chart's a little more full, and hopefully the usability and the readability is a little better as the products are a little more spaced out. But overall, it operates the exact same way. They're sorted by oil volume from lightest on the left to heaviest on the right, and by response to friction, with the sharpest responding balls toward the top of the chart and the smoothest responding balls toward the bottom of the chart. You'll see the attitudes are basically stacked right on top of each other, and the carbon is going to be a little stronger, built for more medium oil conditions. We'll start here with the carbon. You'll see that it is just a little step down and a little step sharper than the knockout. I may have mentioned it previously, but in case I didn't, or I said it in my head, or I edited it out, I feel like the carbon is almost characteristically like a hybrid, despite the fact that it is technically a compounded pearl. The Activator Extreme Hook cover stock is definitely more diggy and just stronger overall than the Savvy Hook cover stock that was on the Jab Midnight. If I were to put the Midnight back on this chart, I would probably put it effectively directly under the Defender, a little higher on the chart than the carbon, and probably a little higher on the chart even maybe than the Attitude in terms of sharpness, but certainly just a little less oil volume capabilities out of the Midnight Blue because of the fact that it is cleaner through the front part of the lane and just a little less total board coverage overall. Switching the cover stock on this Jab Carbon means that it's going to be a much more likely candidate for fresher oil conditions. If you bowl on medium volume oil conditions that have moderate length or moderate long length, I think this one is much more well suited than the previous Jabs were to give you enough mid lane security to read and still back end like you expect a Jab to back end. And I don't feel like you lose too much on the back end because of the fact that it starts earlier. That was the benefit of switching to Activator Extreme Hook. It gives you a little extra mid lane dig, but I don't feel like you're blending it out or making it too smooth overall in doing so. It still has that characteristic Jab cut at the back of the lane, and it's positioned relatively centered overall, which means that it's going to be maximum versatility. And of course, if the Jab gets a little too much ball, starts reading a little too early, or is just a little too aggressive for the pattern that you're bowling on, then a step down to the Attitude is going to be perfect. Shape-wise, these balls aren't a ton different. The Attitude is just flares a little less, and the core shape just lends itself to being a little rounder overall. The core revs up maybe even a little earlier than the Jab does, but the nature of this compounded cover stock and the lack of flare potential compared to carbon mean that it's going to float through the fronts just a little bit easier before making a really similar, if not little sharper, change of direction at the back of the lane. This Attitude definitely packs a punch for its price point, and it holds its own. It's not really all that far from a Midnight Blue. If it were me, I would take my Midnight Blue out of my bag and plop in a carbon right above it and an Attitude right below it, and you have a really nice spectrum covered. If we want to talk about sport bowling for a second, then the attitude control is an absolute must. This ball has a lot more flare potential than a like-drilled purple hammer, which means that it's going to give you more mid-lane read and maybe a little less back-end motion, but what it lacks in a little less back-end motion, it more than makes up for in total hook. You can still keep your angles moderate. It flares enough that you can open up the launch angles a little bit and not worry about it getting squirty or wiggly. Urethane balls tend to get oil shine on the cover itself if you're not constantly wiping them off. So having a big flare ring spacing is definitely advantageous, and it gives you the confidence to throw this ball away with a little more launch angle without worrying about it just getting so wiggly or the cover surface getting so shiny so fast that it kind of like skids in its own carry down. I feel like some of those issues are remedied by having a higher flaring core, and this is the highest flaring symmetrical core that we've put a urethane cover on, at least to my knowledge. And of course it is that super saucy, super special urethane cover, so it's going to be a good first option for heavier volumes, maybe when something like a purple hammer, something like a double cross is just not flaring enough or not hooking enough overall, but you still need that really trapped control shape. I mentioned sport bowling as the ideal option for this ball, but I can also see it blending some overly clipped, super wet, dry house conditions where the ratio from right to left or from middle to right is like 1,000,000 to 1 and they don't oil the outside of the lane, where reactive balls, especially shiny reactive balls, a miss out tends to overreact really hard and a miss in tends to skid forever, and you're next thing you know you're hitting the 3-pin. 2-pin for lefties. This attitude control has the potential to blend something like that. And I don't want you guys coming after me. I hope you don't know my address, but I think in today's modern game, that's just a reality. So lots of versatility here with the attitude control on medium to light sport shots and on overly clipped house shots. On blended house shots, no reason to be using urethane. Grab your favorite reactive piece and get in and go to town. Well, that video ended up maybe being a little longer than it had to be, but I hope you can tell that I'm actually really excited to be talking about these products. I think they make really great shapes, and these balls have been out for a while now, so hopefully you guys have had a chance to get these into your hands. If you have, comment below, tell me what you think about them, and of course, never be afraid to comment below and ask me any question about anything in the Brunswick lineup. I'm always happy to respond. While you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook pages at Bowling Buckosh. I do my best to make the videos as soon as the releases come out, but time isn't always on my side. But make sure you check back often for new videos, and until next time, see you later.